system, could we pre-distribute wealth? Could we democratize the economy? Could we change the way the wealth gets created in the first place by engaging more people directly in the economy and ensuring that they get compensation for the value that they create? Well, here are, very quickly, half a dozen ways that that could occur. Number one, there are 2 billion people in the world who don't have a bank account. We can now bring them into the global economy almost overnight. Now, we've seen this through a very primitive technology called M-Pesa in Kenya, where something like 20% of all transactions go through a network that's not a bank, provided by a telco. But that's all traditional technology. Well, there are new blockchain-based companies like BitPesa that supercharge our ability to do that. Right there, that could have a huge impact on global prosperity. Number two, all around the world, in the developing world, is Hernando de Soto in this room, by any chance? No. So he's a great collaborator, and he argues that the single most important issue in prosperity and getting ahead is land titles. 70% of the people in the developed world that have land have a flaky title. You're in Honduras, some dictator comes to power and says, I know you got a piece of paper says you own your land, but the government computer says my friend owns your land. I was at a session on the digitization of India last night. I argued the single biggest thing that India could do is to embrace blockchains around land titles. Because you're in India and your parents died, you go to the local office and somebody's bribed some low-level clerk and they say, I'm sorry, you don't own your land, you're paying rent. So there are companies like Bitfury, who's here, very active, that are putting land titles onto a blockchain in Georgia. And this is a big opportunity, because once a land title is on a blockchain, no dictator or corrupt official can mess with it. Number three, the sharing economy. People talk about companies like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb as sharing economy companies. I always chuckle, because of course they have very little to do with sharing. In fact, they're successful precisely because they don't share. They aggregate a whole bunch of services together and sell them. And that's created a $70 billion corporation called Uber. Well, what if Airbnb, rather than being a company, became a cooperative, where the owners of couches and rooms got 100% of the value? How could they do that? Well, everything that Airbnb, the company, does could be done by smart contracts, just like what they sound like, contracts that self-execute and have a payment system on a blockchain, and autonomous agents on a blockchain. You want to rent a room, check it out, the right day, meet your criteria, trying to get a place to stay in Davos. Good luck with that. Although there is a cool new app that can actually find a place, a miracle. Brian Bellendorf, who's here, was telling us about that last night. From the Hyperledger project, the inventor of Apache, kind of a cool guy. You do the transaction, it creates a smart contract, you check in, you turn your key, that initiates the first steps of a payment. You stay there, you check out, the payment is executed, and you put your 5-star rating on the blockchain, it's immutable. Everything that the company does could be done by a distributed application. So we can create a real sharing economy. Imagine what that would do for prosperity. Number four, there are all kinds of people in the economy that create value, but because of all these intermediaries, they get crumbs from what they create. Musicians, artists, scientists, journalists. Let's take musicians. The music industry was disrupted by the Internet of Information. Because we didn't have an Internet of value, the only thing we could do with music, MP3 files, was to publish them. So we all published them, and that deeply hurt the musicians and the creators of content in the first place. If you're a musician, and 35 years ago you wrote a platinum song, million singles, you could get $46,000 in revenue. You do the same thing today that gets 1 million streams, you don't get $46,000, you get $34. Enough to buy a pizza, where I come from. Won't even get you to the airport, let alone a living for a year. So big companies like Apple came along and they tried to fix that by creating a digital rights and selling MP3 files, but that was silly because nobody wants to take possession of the song ultimately. If you want to have any song streamed to you. So Spotify got involved, and every one of these took a bigger piece of the action. The poor musicians are left with crumbs. Is Imogen Heap in the room? Chance? No. Okay, so she's here at Davos talking about blockchain, and she's created a new community called Mycelium. And anyone here from Consensus Systems? It's a company that is building a music platform for a blockchain. Here's how it works. She posts a song, she's already done this, on this platform, and the song is inside a smart contract that specifies all the intellectual property rights. You want to listen to a song, maybe it's free. You want to put in your music, the song will say, or in your movie, the song will say, well, here are the rights that specify that. You want to make a ringtone, it's different. She says the song acts as a business. The song is out there protecting her rights, and the song is a payment system and collecting money. Imagine if the creators of value could be the direct recipients of value, and then they pay Spotify and others to do the marketing for them. Number 5, we can create a new healthy age of entrepreneurship. Now, you'll read in the book, we wrote a whole chapter about what does blockchain do to the deep structured architecture of the firm. Basically, because it radically drops transaction costs in the economy, the costs of search, finding all the right information, people, and assets to do something, the cost of coordination, of getting them all to work together with smart contracts, that's now possible. The cost of contracting, imagine if every little activity in the economy were a contract. It'd be prohibitive, so we bring that inside the boundaries of the firm. Well, now we have instantly creatable smart contracts that police themselves and have a payment system built in. And overall, the cost of establishing trust. Now, these are not my views, the views of the Nobel Prize-winning economist Ronald Coase, who wrote about this 80 years ago and described why we have firms. Well, all of that is about to change, and it means that little companies can now have the capability of big companies without the main liabilities, deadening bureaucracy, legacy, culture, systems, and so on. Data. It's a weird thing about the Internet of Information. We've created this data and other people have captured it. Data frackers, as I call them. Companies that take our data and create the virtual image of you, and it may know more about you than you do, because you don't know what you bought a year ago, what you said a year ago, or your exact location. The trouble is that this has become our digital identity, and it's not owned by us. We need to get it back. To protect our privacy, and people who say privacy is dead, get over it, are deeply mistaken. Privacy is the foundation of freedom, and we need to get our identities back and manage them responsibly. But also, if we could own our own data, we could monetize it. And we could use that data to help us better plan our lives. This could be a big boon to prosperity. Well, you'll read, and there are projects underway today, to create the virtual you in a black box, and it's owned by you, and it moves around with you, and it's cryptographically secured, and it's really stingy about data. You know, in a lot of transactions, if you sell me something, you don't even need to know who I am. You just need to know that you got paid. And that transaction and the data from it is captured by me, and I can use that to plan my life. And maybe I'll sell it to you. So this is a big opportunity. The final one that I'll mention to you is an opportunity to create good government. And this is important for prosperity because governments set the context for things to happen or not happen in the economy. We can build a whole new platform for government now. And you got people like Tony Scott, who was Obama's CIO, I presume he's retiring now, but who argued that essentially government should be based on blockchains. You know, in all of your countries, you have an auditor general or somebody who comes in a year later and tries to find out what terrible things have happened, if you're in a good country. Well, that auditor general function can be replaced by software on a blockchain. You don't find out about it a year later. Some government official is bribed or does something incorrect, you find out about it right away. And overall, the opportunity to solve this crisis of legitimacy of our democratic institutions. All around the world, democracy is broken. In most OECD countries, youth voting has been declining, And more young people agree with the bumper sticker, "Don't vote, it only encourages them." And the suppression of youth voting in the United States is one of the huge factors in the election of Donald Trump. So could we create a whole new model of democracy based on transparency, based on accountability, where politicians are elected with smart contracts and funds don't flow unless they did what they promised the citizens as opposed to what their big money funders want them to do? Could we have, rather than citizens being inert, could we have a second era where there's a culture of public deliberation and active citizenship? This is a time of vast opportunity and promise. And we could solve this problem that's at the heart of many of the discussions at Davos by embracing a new technology. My final thought is that technology doesn't fix anything. It's people that do. But Alex and I, the way we started off the book is we said, once again, the technology genie has been released from the bottle. And it was summoned by an unknown person or persons at this uncertain time in human history. And it gives us another kick at the can. That's what it does. Another opportunity to rewrite the economic power grid and to change the old order of things to create a more prosperous and just world, but only if we will it. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Don. Again, your vision on blockchain and the internet and the digital economy altogether is outstanding. And I just maybe need to tell him once again that he was my hero when I was already in the UN, when I was Chief Security Officer of the UN. I was reading all his books as their books, so it has inspired a lot of people. I want to go one step ahead, as this is my style. I love to play with technology. Everybody talks about blockchain, everybody talk about artificial intelligence, but maybe, can you raise your hand, anyone in this room that has ever saw a blockchain working? Raise your hands, please. Okay. So you see, it's about 20. We are about 300. So we you know, when Don accepted to join the Roundtable, I said to him, let's convert this smart book, an amazing book, into something that can connect to the blockchain. And we only have about 2 weeks to do it. So we actually did it, and we're going to demonstrate it to you. So just to frame the technology for the people that they are coming from the technology world, one of the problems of blockchain is authentication. We're going to cover that with the experts in the roundtable. So this is one of the things WISeKey does, is putting cryptographic keys, identities, into objects. And that chip, which is on the book that everybody has, or at least somebody has, that is exactly the technology that allows this book to be authenticated by a mobile phone through an application which reads a cryptographic identity on this book, which is stored on the chip, which is a stick on the book. And that identity is unique, means that it cannot be replicated. I mean, WISeKey in Switzerland, for instance, do the same technology for e-voting. Imagine 2 persons voting at the same time with the same identity. Obviously, that would be fraud. So the challenge was, when we started our company, how can we ensure that every single object is unique and cannot be counterfeited or replicated? So obviously that solves a lot of problems for many industry. We don't do that here in Switzerland with watches. We have 250 million copies of Swiss watches around the world, some of them with an amazing technology to the point it's very difficult to even detect from the real one. So we are putting chips, identities, and chips inside watches, actually. Bulgari, Dior, and many others are using our technology. So the challenge was to do it on a book. And the first thing Don asked to me was, that's amazing, because that can actually reduce potential counterfeiting on this book. Every book is unique. But it also adds his personal signature, so he doesn't have to handwrite anymore a message. The message is embedded into the application. So when the application will detect the chip, the identity, they will just show a sentence from Alex and Don, welcome the person that has acquired that book. But it has many other benefits. Now Don is in direct connection with his ecosystem. Don doesn't know now who reads the books. He doesn't know that. And eventually the publisher gets some information, but he does no analytics. And he has millions of fans around the world. What about him getting that feedback directly from the user all the way down to him? So this is